Shalom, everybody. Haven't been back for a while, so it's good to be back and good to be able to talk to you now and to share a little bit more on our Back to Basics course. Basically, the first part, as you know, those of you who have been in here before, went over the 4 different steps involved in the relationship that we have with this Creator, with our covenant that we have with God. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the 13 principles of faith. Next, after we finish the 13 principle of faith, I want to go into a little bit of the 10 commandments. And the reason I'm doing this is because the basics of Judaism really carry a lot of different topics to them. And we have many great people who have delved into them and really explored them and explained them. And for all practical purposes, most of us are not exposed to or don't have access to those teachings. So it's very hard sometimes to know what are the basics of our faith. So in the past weeks, we've spoken about some of these basics, but Rambam, Maimonides, saw a great need to write what he calls the 13 principles of faith, which are kind of boiling down the whole range of what we believe in, not in terms of the specifics, but the generals. He doesn't go into any specific mitzvahs that we believe in as a result of them being written in the Torah, or part of our tradition, or part of our Kabbalah, but they are talked about really as far as what do we believe in as Jews? What does it mean to be a Jew and to have Jewish belief? So a lot of these mitzvahs have to do also with negating what other nations and other religions might be teaching, to really try to fine-tune what does it mean to have a Jewish belief. In fact, the first 6 of the 13 principles of faith really deal with God and understanding what is this God? What's it all about? Who is he, she, where is he from? What's our relationship? And so forth and so on, which we spoke about a little bit, but now we're going to go into from a little bit of a different angle as far as how Maimonides sees it. So the first of the 13 principles of faith is as follows. Belief in the existence of the Creator, who is perfect in every manner of existence, and is the primary cause of all that exists. So there's 3 parts to this, which each one of them come to lift up our perspective a little bit more and negate a little bit more what belief system others might have. First part is the belief in the existence of the Creator. So that's a very basic approach. What does that mean? He doesn't say belief in the existence of a God. He says specifically belief in the existence of a Creator who created and creates us meaning everything that's in creation. Because that's how we relate to God, is through the fact that we see ourselves as created by God. There are those who say that even if God exists, the creation didn't need any type of creator behind it in order to be able to come to being, which I haven't studied their scientific doctrines to understand what they mean and what it's based on. And for us, for all practical purposes, it's possible for a person, not necessarily a traditional Jewish perspective, but possible for a person to believe that God exists, whether or not you believe that he created the world or didn't create the world. But as we spoke about earlier, the Hasidic review of what it means when we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, that God is one, is a little bit unique. Because it's not like we're talking about, okay, there's one God up there as opposed to 2, 3, or 4 gods. That's how we're monotheists, because we believe in one God. And he, she is up there creating this world and doing whatever he has to do in order to make the world happen. No, that's not the way we look at it. To the contrary, as the Alter Rebbe explains at length in Tanya, look at the Torah, and all the Rebbes since, and the Baal Shem Tov, and these are going back even further, have brought us to a view of understanding God as this truly infinite force, as we're going to talk about in future classes concerning these lessons from these principles of faith from Maimonides. But this God is intense, is infinite, is involved in this world, is flowing energy into this creation moment to moment, millisecond to millisecond, and that it's all, as we're going to discuss, all united and all one holistic whole. That's a pretty incredible belief system to have, and really puts things into a very different perspective. So taking this apart, he starts off with a belief in the true existence of the Creator. We have a belief as opposed to non-belief. A person, let's say, who considers himself an atheist and has no belief that there could be anything. He's researched it and he's concluded, and he has full confidence in his belief system that it's not possible that there be any such thing as a creator to this existence, and there's no doubt in his or her mind that this whole existence exists as a matter of chance, as a matter of coincidence, and that we are literally the product of billions and billions of coincidences that have happened over the course of time and that continue to happen in order to somehow bring this amazing existence into being. Well, if a person really researches that and comes to that logical conclusion, I don't see how it's logical, and I don't see how it's really a greater leap of faith than, let's say, a person who, on a very simple scale, just says, I believe in God, period, end of sentence, and I don't know why, I don't know how. But a person wants to come to that conclusion, then people have a right to do that. God gave them free choice, and they can say, listen, that's it, there's no God. So the first principle is that there is a God, and this God is the creator of the universe. Second part of this first principle is that who is perfect in every manner of existence. In other words, it's not a God who's some God with a small g, who is fighting with the forces of evil upstairs, or who's playing out some political role, or as perhaps other religions and other traditions might have it, and who has certain blemishes and is complemented by other gods and so forth and so on. But that this is a God, that the God itself is one and is perfect. Adon Olam Hashem Malach B'Tedem Kol Yitziv Nivra. That God was whole, master of the universe, before he even brought this into being. And God's perfection is an existence that we really don't understand. Ultimately, we don't understand. And for those who would ask the question of who created God, it's a very good question. And we know that if something had created God, that would have been God. So God is the final first force of existence, and somehow always existed and created time. So when we say that the beginning of time, time itself is a creation. So God himself, herself, and I'm going to probably say that once in a while because God has both masculine and feminine characteristics, and that's why we, in this world, it comes down as a being male and female. But God is this total existence, completely independent of our universe. And as a result, is not necessarily affected by the universe itself. And that's a topic for itself we'll go into sometime. So God is perfect in every manner of existence. And then we make a big jump. And the last part we say, and is the primary cause of all that exists. That's a pretty heavy statement. Because not only talking about all of existence, all of the universe, all of those beautiful pictures from the Hubble telescope, all of the things that go on 5 miles below the ocean sea, the oceans and the seas, as far as the depths of life there that have no access even to light. So just the existence of their life form is a mystery still to this date for science itself. But every aspect of the core of the earth, the inner core, the planets, the fact that they are all going around and we are all working in sync with each other to be able to create, whether it be a solar eclipse as we had yesterday, or whether it be to just create a universe and a solar system which is working the way it works in perfection. And all of this is somehow just at the snap of the fingers, is something that God puts together in order to be able to make as part of this universe. So all existence has God as this causal, primordial being that brings this into existence. As we say in davening, in Shacharis, the morning prayers after we finish the Baruch Hu, HaMachadesh B'tuvo B'chol Yom Tomid Maaseh Bereshis, who renews in his goodness every single day, every single moment really, according to the Rebbes. Every single moment, the whole existence of creation, constantly renewing it, constantly flowing that creative energy into it in order to bring it into being, constantly giving it life and creation. So the whole of existence really, at any moment, is dependent on this God. It's a story about two Jews who were finishing up their morning prayers, taking off their tefillin, talking with each other, and one of them says, I'm really starting to have sfeikus. I'm starting to have doubts. So the other one, who's a chassid, says to him, interesting, from my learning also, I'm starting to have sfeikus as well. So then the first one says, I'm really not sure anymore if God exists. So the second one wakes up and says, what do you mean? That's the type of sfeikus, that's the type of doubts that you're having? You're having doubts about whether or not God exists? I'm having doubts whether or not I exist. That God exists is for sure. In other words, when we learn Chassidut, and we learn about how God creates the world, God's existence is so out there in the book, so plain to see, so clearly understood, that the question is, how is it possible in this whole scenario of this billion, trillion, infinite amount of watts that God is flowing into this world, that we should exist? And of course, the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe, and part 2 of the Tanya goes into answering that very, very urgent question, to understand how it is that we, on such a finite scale, are able to exist in such an infinite existence within an infinite existence as God. I told earlier in the class, some of you might not have heard, about the comparison to a nuclear reactor core, which I'll repeat very quickly. That nuclear reactor core, let's say, is 1 trillion watts. And in order to get 40 watts into a bulb into my house, it has to go through many, 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 many transformers, so that the energy that comes into my house won't blow the bulb to smithereens. So similarly, God, out of his kindness, and Machadish Betuvo, out of his goodness, flows that energy, that creative force, through many, many, many different transformers, so it gets to a point where it's able to maintain a 2-watt level, let's say, in creating this world. 2 watts in the sense that it's strong enough to be able to give energy to the world, to be what it is and be in existence, but small enough, nevertheless, to also have a free choice for those who live in the world. And we're not going to go into that right now, but this first principle carries with it a lot of very interesting ideas for our basic belief system. The second is the belief in God's absolute and unparalleled unity. In other words, that God is one. When we say Hashem Echad, God is one, we really mean one. We don't mean one as opposed to 2 or 3 or 4. It's not, not exactly the greatest statement of monotheism that we believe that God's one as opposed to more than one. We're not polytheistic. Okay, great, that's one step in the right direction. But what we're really trying to say is that God is oneness. Total and absolute oneness. Now, the difficult part about that is that we don't see that oneness. Why? Because, as I mentioned, God is flowing this energy into the world and flowing it into a table, a chair, a flower, a candelabra, a picture. And each of those is a vessel of their own. Our bodies, our minds, our eyes, our ears. Each of them is a vessel on their own, which is containing that energy, containing that godly light, that godly creative force. So as a result, God made the world specifically in a way where we don't see that unity. But the hardest part of not seeing that unity is when we face evil, when we see the negative energy that's in the world. And when we see the negative energy, and nevertheless to believe in this second principle of the belief that God's absolute and unparalleled unity exists, that even though that God created negative energy, that all of this gets back to the absolute and oneness of God. That's a hard one. And that we're going to go into next time, because understanding that unparalleled unity that the Rambam and Maimonides is talking about is one of the greatest challenges of being a Jew. Because for other religions, it's very easy to say, but listen, there's God, and he's the master of all good. And then there's some other force, which is the master of all bad. Call it Satan, call it Lucifer, call it whatever they call it in other religions. And that's the master of all bad. And they're in a struggle with each other. Problem is, it's very nice as far as creating a convenient scenario upstairs, but it's impossible for us as monotheists. to say that. Because then what we're saying is there's really two gods. There's the God of evil and the God of good. We can't say that. There's one God who's the God of everything, whose unparalleled unity is one of our basic principles of faith. So, God willing, we'll go into that a little bit more tomorrow. Take care. Have a great day.